Yes, we are. Perfect. Great. So welcome to the Ultimate Clinical Research Toolbox webinars. Super excited that you're here, joining us for the second time. And we are basically, for the agenda, I say just talk a little bit about myself, just in the context of why this course is important and why I have a lot of experience in this industry. Then I'm going to talk about how unique and innovative this industry is. Then I'm going to demo the Ultimate Clinical Research Toolbox, and then we're going to answer your questions. So I've been in the industry, Dawood, for about 16 years. And you will notice that it's an industry that has a very low turnover rate, like very low, just because it's once the skills that we have in this industry are very unique and there's such a high demand for them. I've been working as a global trials manager, consultant, have my own company. I'm also a thought leader for the clinical trials management in emerging markets, particularly Africa. I've worked for small to large sponsors, and by that I mean the tiny biotechs, to the big giants like the Pfizers and the GSKs. And I've been on a lot of various therapeutic areas. And the reason is because I'm on the operational side. I set up things, coach, mentor, market, run audits, put together best practices. I work with the key opinion leaders, the medical doctors and healthcare professionals who participate, work with different governments to make sure we have the right regulatory tools. And so I'm really operational. And I also have a lot of skills in online and offline marketing just because of the nature of of my company and the job. So I noticed that there was a chat message, and let me make sure that I am taking care of that. Fantastic. Okay, great. So let's move on. Let's not take up too much time. So it's a very unique industry. And what I enjoy about it is that we have country regulations. Like in the United States, we have the FDA that governs, the big body that governs the clinical trials, as well as the Food and Drug Administration. So it includes clinical trials. But then we have global regulations as well, which are really the good clinical practice of GCP laws that actually govern clinical trials globally. And you hear things like the ICH GCP, which is the International Conference on Harmonization for Good Clinical Practices. So that's really a body that governs research globally. But the FDA has a far reach, it's everywhere. If there's a clinical trial being run somewhere in the world, chances are the FDA is involved one way or the other. And so the skills that I mentioned are used anywhere in the world. If I were to say move my company and say, okay, I want to go run I do work on clinical trials globally, and I actually do not need to move per se. But if I said, okay, I want to go work in an office, say in Rwanda, and I want to work in the clinical research industry there, it doesn't really matter because it's the exact same skill set. If I want to go, say, to Kenya and open up a clinical research site, work with the doctors there, which is what I do, and say, okay, let's put some best practices together. How can we set up your site, your clinic or your hospital to run clinical trials? It doesn't really matter because it's the exact same thing that's happening here in Brazil, or it's happening in Ghana or Nigeria. So it doesn't really matter. That's what's so great about this industry. If you become a part of it, then those skills are transferable anywhere in the world. I also talked about the very low turnover. I cannot recall of anybody who's left this industry. I mean, I came in actually working on the corporate side of things as a full-time employee, and then I created my own company and really became more of a thought leader, consulting, making projects successful. And sometimes I work on a whole project with my team, or sometimes I only work on little pieces of it. But the most important skill that I've honed over the years is the ability to make sure that the clinical research side, which is the foundation of this industry, that they have the tools and resources that they need. And that's why this course came about, because I looked at all the practices from audits, from past experience, from the complaints that I received from clinical researchers or healthcare professionals who came in with no training and no coaching, and then for whatever reason they got dinged by a regulatory body. And so the clinical research toolbox, or the ultimate clinical research toolbox, it's the solution that I thought would really help people. Particularly, I focus more on the African continent and the Africans in the diaspora, because I just find that, many times we're not exposed to a lot of the opportunities out there. I spent a great deal the beginning of my career really helping professionals here in the US and doctors, and I decided that it was best now to really put my attention in really on Africa, because it's my area of specialty in terms of emerging markets. And so it is set up in a very effective way, and it's really set up for someone who's interested in a career. The clinical research site and how it's set up is at the heart of clinical trials. And when you know what happens at a clinical research site, you can excel anywhere in this industry, because you know exactly what happens from the beginning of a project to the end. I also wanted it to help successful clinical research sites that people kind of stumble into this industry. It's the industry that's hidden in plain view, but somehow people don't know a lot about it. So I wanted to make sure that, people at clinical research sites that are new have the tools and resources that they require to run successful trials. I also wanted it to be for people who actually work on a clinical research site. So if say you own a clinical research site, when I work with a lot of the key opinion leaders around the world, sometimes they do have staff turnover. Basically, people are in the same industry, but they're moving from one clinical practice to another, and then they don't have a tool in which to with which to coach them and to train them so they can get up and running as soon as possible. And then for sites that want to expand, so I've helped a lot of doctors who have one facility, maybe it's cardiovascular trials, and then they want to now create partnerships, whether it's with ophthalmologists, endocrinologists, and they want to create a whole network of different research sites. So I show them how to do that as well. And of course, people who want to make serious changes in their life. If you're on this call, then you definitely want to make a serious change. So let me go ahead and demo it. But before going into that, Dawood, I reserve the Q&A at the end. But if there's anything that you noticed that you wanted me to go back and cover, please let me know. Now check the chat box. Oh, fantastic, fantastic, thank you. So let's go into the toolbox itself. And hopefully I didn't close that screen. It's quite a day. So let me, just give me 1 second. I'll go into my Chrome, and it's in there, but let me go ahead and, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna close up a few things. And then I'll share. Fantastic, here we are. Just wanted to share the right screen. Great, so Dawood, can you see this screen, which says the Ultimate Clinical Research Toolbox? Hello? Okay, good. Okay, great. So I'm gonna show you the course itself and how it flows and what happens. This course has 68 modules and they're self-paced. It covers the basics of clinical research. So the way that it's structured is that anybody can come in who's never been in this industry, they have no idea. And at the end of it, they can really understand what clinical trials are about. But the good news is that this is just one, this is 50% of the program. So in this portion, we talk about clinical research laws. The toolbox has everything you need to know about setting up a clinical research facility, from your staff to equipment to recruitment. And then I have a section for essential documents, because like every industry, there's certain documents that we have to use to run clinical trials. The project flow is like any project management flow for waterfall project management. And it has what happens at startup, what happens once everything gets going, we go into maintenance mode, and we go into closeout mode. And then I also talk about different types of site visits, you know, who actually visits you and why are they coming to see you, and what you have to do to make sure that those visits are actually successful. Then I have best practices, which I love, because this right here is as successful as it gets. Everything that you need to do to make sure that you're running your trials on a day-to-day basis and you're getting mega results and excellence. And I have a whole section on gifts. These are everything that you need if you want to start a clinical research site or a career. All of this are just tools and resources that are free that you can use. Then I have a video on marketing. Now, the way that the video on marketing is set up, it's targeted at someone who wants to set up a clinical research site. And it's just basically a glimpse. Now, if you choose, once you take the course, then it is what you want to do with the course that will then set us up for how to coach and train you. And so that is the course itself. Again, it's self-paced, 68 weeks. There are many ways you can take it. You can just go through the modules, you know, beginning to the end at your own pace. We have a call every 2 weeks to address any questions that you might have or anything that might come up. If you already have a clinic, I would say start watching it with your staff, go through the modules, and then start applying it. And then make sure that they attend those weekly calls, those bi-weekly calls or bi-monthly calls as well, because there's a lot that we cover during those calls that really helps you. So that is the program in a nutshell. And that said, I will stop here and we'll get into the Q&A, and we can stop the recording now. Okay, Dawood, any questions for me?